Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Democratic Congressional Candidates Forum for the 11th District of New Jersey. My name is Jay Cooper, and I am the president of Temple B'nai Abraham. Before we go any further, I want to acknowledge the sad news we all received this morning with the passing of Governor Dick Cody. Governor Cody was a friend to this temple for decades. He represented the district that this temple sits in. I know for all of you and for many in this room, he touched your lives both as a public servant and as a close friend of all of you. This is a profound loss. So it is only appropriate that I'm going to ask anyone who's able to or comfortable standing to please rise so that we observe 1 minute of silence for the 53rd Governor of New Jersey, the Honorable Dick Cody. May Governor Cody's memory always be for a blessing. Thank you. A quick security reminder before we get started. Please take a moment to locate your nearest exit. In the seat pocket in front of you, you will also find our in case of emergency information cards. We are grateful to have you here for what we will hopefully will be a thoughtful, respectful, and informative afternoon. Today's program brings together a diverse group of candidates with a wide range of experiences and perspectives, and we are proud to host this event here at Temple B'nai Abraham. Thank you all. It is my privilege now to introduce our moderator for today's forum, Linda Scherzer. Linda is an accomplished journalist and communicator with decades of experience as a reporter and former Middle East correspondent for CNN. Beyond journalism, Linda is a respected community leader and currently serves as director of the Community Relations Committee of the Jewish Federation of Greater Metro West of New Jersey. I thank the staff of Temple B'nai Abraham for making this all happen today, and please join me in welcoming our moderator, Linda Scherzer.
Thank you, Jay, for those very kind words, and especially for inviting us from the Jewish Federation to co-sponsor today's event. Welcome to the voters and candidates to our 2026 Democratic Candidates Forum for the special election in CD 11. I'm joined today by Ben Hoffer, Chair of Jewish Federation's JCRC. Together, we lead the Government Affairs Wing of Federation and work closely, very closely, with our state and federal leaders to advance the agenda of the Jewish community. Today, our goal is to help you, the voters, learn about the candidates, who they are, where they stand, and why they're running to serve and represent the voters of CD 11 in Congress. What makes this forum different and distinct is that today's conversation will be framed through a Jewish lens, focusing on priority issues of concern to the Jewish community. While we as Jewish Americans care about many issues, of course, that are facing our country, affordability, access to health care, reproductive rights, immigration, and the state of our democracy, to name a few, given the time limits, we will leave those issues to an upcoming forum led by the League of Women Voters.
Thank you, Linda. To the candidates on stage, a few words about us. The Jewish community of New Jersey is the 4th largest in the country. We are diverse people in terms of our political views and Jewish religious affiliation, yet we are all inspired by the same traditions. We care deeply about Israel, the defensive war of the last 2 years, against terrorist groups committed to its destruction, the rise of anti-Semitism, the importance of securing our synagogues and institutions, and the Jewish imperative to care for the communities most vulnerable. Now to today's format. We'll begin with
opening statements of 2 minutes questions for the candidates in which they're going to be asked to limit their answers to 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds. Oops. And then, time permitting, we will give you a minute for closing remarks at the end. We have a timekeeper, Marcia Swaybill, who will raise a yellow sign indicating 30 seconds left to speak, and another signaling that time is up. We have 11 candidates on stage today, so we want to make sure everyone has an equal opportunity to be heard. We are going to respectfully ask that you adhere to the time limits. To keep things somewhat interesting, we're going to intersperse the questioning with requests for shows of hands on certain issues and encourage voters to follow up by either reaching out to the candidates after today's forum or by checking out their websites. In the interest of time, we are not going to formally introduce the candidates, but you can read their bios on the handouts that were printed and distributed today. So now to opening remarks. Again, we've asked the candidates to prepare 2 minutes on why they're running for Congress and what are their top priority issues. They pick numbers from a hat or a bag to determine lineup, and we are going to start today with Analelia Mejia.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon. My name is Ana Lilia Mejia. I am an organizer with 25 years experience working in New Jersey, across the country, where I have focused on how to live out my values of uplifting, protecting, upholding community. I have spent many years in New Jersey working on behalf of, working alongside with working families. I fought to raise the minimum wage in New Jersey. I fought to pass earned sick days in New Jersey. I worked with folks even on this stage to expand democracy, to expand opportunity. I feel very rooted in the idea that we have an obligation to each other. I think I share that with my Jewish brothers and sisters. This idea that we have a responsibility to each other. That responsibility for me has played out in ensuring that when I have an opportunity to be in a position of power, I advocate for justice, for equity, for freedom. It is undeniable that in this moment in our nation's history, we are all in danger. Rising anti-Semitism, the hatred against immigrants, anti-Blackness that has impacted our community, our nation since inception. All of these things are on the rise because we have, frankly, what I believe an authoritarian at the helm of our nation, who has unleashed that hatred, because as long as we're fighting each other, we're not paying attention to what's really impacting our community. I want to also share that for me, I am clear that we have to be in service and in community of each other, that it is insufficient to just call the question or say you are wrong, you are distasteful, we have to build with each other if we are in fact going to protect democracy, our nation, our communities, and our future. I feel deeply connected to people, including the Jewish community. I am open to learning and being in conversation, and I expect that when I am elected into office, I will count on you to help guide, to help inform, and to work together to protect what we hold dear. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mejia. Our next speaker is Lieutenant Governor Tahisha Way.
Thank you, Linda. And before I start, I just want to thank you, Marcia, Ben, President Cooper, and the entire B'nai Abraham congregation convening here, because this is a precipice moment in our nation's history. Sadly so, anti-Semitism is on the rise. Look what just happened in Jackson, Mississippi. Something that occurred in 1967 with the KKK. Trump is crippling our economy, our opportunities, our health care, and of course our democracy. See, I am Lieutenant Governor, Secretary of State, but I am also a proud mom. My most important role of 4 daughters, who oftentimes think I only graduated from kindergarten, but that's okay. But the one thing they understand is I am a protector and a fighter. I grew up in the Bronx, New York, two proud union workers who also understood their assignment to protect the public that comes across them. At the age of 19, I suffered a massive hemorrhage. I almost lost my life and vision. Our insurance paid for my hospital and surgery, yet it denied my occupational therapy, so I had to retrain my own self how to read. I look at my role now as Secretary of State, being the true guardian of our democracy. I have been sued by Trump relentlessly, in which they've wanted to vote to suppress. And I said no, and I will continue to say no, and I will win. One of the most important portfolios in my department is overseeing the Israel Commission. As Lieutenant Governor, I have protected tenants, mental health of our kids, expanded child care services, and supported our small businesses. And these are the things that I want to fight for in Congress, ensuring that we are going to stand up to anti-Semitism like I have done these past 8 years, lower costs, stand strong for our democracy. And I just ask that you research more information about me at tahishaway.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Our next speaker is Jeff Brazel.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. I stand before you as a proud Jew and a proud Zionist. My son attended Columbia University for 4 years, and I can tell you definitively that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. I'm not here to ask you to vote for me just because I'm Jewish. I am a 2-term mayor in Morris Township. I understand how this country runs at its bottommost level. I've just won my 5th term to council in Morris Township, but I'm also an engineer and an innovator. I have 13 patents to my name, and I brought a process-oriented, results-driven approach to Morris Township. And I should have said when I became mayor, I was the very first Democratic mayor in Morris Township. We flipped the town from red to blue. I was the very first Democratic mayor in 2019 in Morris Township. But with that engineering mindset, we showed that Democrats can deliver for constituents, and that's exactly what our country needs today. But I want to be clear that I am standing here before you to be a voice for our people. We've been under attack. Israel was attacked on October 7th, and here in the United States, we've been under attack since October 8th. And we've suffered tremendously because we don't have enough strong Jewish voices standing up to represent us and standing up to support Israel. I am here on this stage to tell you that I want to be a strong Jewish voice for all of us down in DC and here in the state of New Jersey. I'm a proud member of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Jewish Federation. I'm on the board of my synagogue at Morristown Jewish Center. I have been investing my time in the Jewish community and working to build it up. So now I'm standing before you today to ask for your vote, to be with me with a strong Jewish vote to take down to Congress. And I remind you that the Jewish people will be blessed when we stand together in unity and as one. So I'm asking all of you to stand with me, send a strong Jewish voice to Washington for me to represent you and support Israel. And you can get more information from me at grazelforcongress.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Brazel. Tom Malinowski, the floor is yours. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, my bad. Brendan Gill. Brendan Gill is up.
Up to you.
You want me to keep my number? I'm fine. Do I get an extra 30 seconds? I'm okay. So first of all, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brendan Gill. Thank you so much to Jay, to Ben, to Linda, Marcia, to all of the members of Temple B'nai Abraham for doing this, to my colleagues who are here for participating in the democratic process, and for all of you for being here today at this critical time in our country's history. Also to the men and women of the Essex County Sheriff's Department who are here helping us to keep us safe during this event. As I said, for those of you who I have not met, and I've been proud to be able to say that I've been welcomed here many times, so thank you again for having me. My name is Brendan Gill. I am born and raised in the township of Montclair. My dad is a recently retired 53-year public school educator. We launched that campaign in front of his home. I was able, as a result of being the son of a union member, 5 of us in that home, to be able to go to a good quality public school, was able to go to a college and live a career, my own version of the American dream. That included working for 2 members of Congress, including 2 of, I think, the most extensive champions of Israel that this state has ever seen, the late Senator Frank Lautenberg, Congressman Steve Rothman, Congressman Bill Pascrell, and U.S. Senator Cory Booker. In addition to that, I had the privilege and honor to lead their political campaigns, and I am running very quickly. I got 30 seconds. I have a 17 and a 14-year-old. Please keep me in your prayers. I am concerned about what this country is going to look like for them, and for your families and mine. I had the honor to be with Linda in Israel in July of 24, at a time when many people told me I should not go. I should not go. And I am running here, raising my hand to run for this seat, to say that this particular community is a big portion of this district, and we need fighters not only to be standing up to Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans, but to be standing with the Jewish community at this time. And that is why I'm here. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gill. Tom Malinowski, floor is yours.
Thank you, Linda. 5 cold winters ago, I was in the House chamber when Trump's mob attacked us. It was a horrible day for our country, but I have to say that when it was over, when we had marched back into that chamber to certify that election to do our job, I felt the country had turned a corner. I'm here today because I was there on that day, and because I was wrong. We didn't turn a corner. I'm here because I'm an immigrant to America. The first time I took the oath to support and defend the Constitution was not when I was sworn into Congress or worked at the State Department. It was when I was 10 years old, getting sworn in as an American citizen at the New York courthouse. And that part of my identity is beyond angry today, to see masked thugs representing the federal government demanding that American citizens show their papers on our streets. It makes me beyond angry to see the top leadership of this country say that America is no longer defined by a set of ideals of freedom that everybody can embrace, but by blood and soil nationalism, something that threatens every minority faith and community in this country, including the Jewish community at a time of rising anti-Semitism on the left and on the right. At the March on Washington in 1963, a rabbi of this temple, Joachim Prince, said that the central problem of our time is not bigotry or hatred, it is silence. And we have watched the most powerful people in this country be silent in the face of this emergency. I'm running because I can't be, because I feel I have to do something, and because I feel that I can offer something as someone who has been there in Congress, who has stood up to this hatred, who has stood up to this president effectively at that level. Somebody who, if you elect me again to represent you in Congress, would not enter as a freshman, but as someone with the seniority and experience to meet this emergency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Malinowski. John Bartlett, floor is yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you all very much for being here. I am the only person on this bima who can say that I spent a year in Israel as a student, and it was the most consequential year of my life, a year that shaped how I think about faith and bias, and a year that shaped how my family has, well, shaped my family, and I'll tell you exactly about that in a moment. I was a Raoul Wallenberg Scholar at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem in 1995 and 1996. So it was a time of both great hope and great fear. The Oslo peace process was going on. We were able to cross the Allenby Bridge into Jordan and meet with representatives of that government. We were able to rent a car and drive all over Judea and Samaria and up to the Galilee with a sense of safety. But it was also, as every day is in Israel, a time of fear. I was in Tel Aviv and heard the shots that ended the life of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. And one day on Mount Scopus, I was waiting for my bus to campus, and it never arrived, because 3 stops earlier on Ramat Eshkol, it had been blown up. You can't understand the visceral nature of that experience and that fear unless you've lived there and be part of it. Most important, and I hinted about this a minute ago, Israel is where I met my wife. So if you said to yourself, where in the world would a nice Christian boy go to find a beautiful Indian American Hindu woman? I know Israel would not be anywhere near the top of your list of guesses, but that is our story, and it has shaped who we are and the work that we do. Many of you know her, Dr. Kathy Joshi, from her work with the Black-Jewish Dialogue in this community and a whole host of other interfaith and anti-bias work. Ordinarily, when I introduce myself, I talk about my record of results as a voting rights lawyer standing up to Donald Trump and to Republicans, or as a county commissioner protecting affordability by cutting county property tax rates every year for 9 years. What I want you to know is my story from Israel and the way in which it connects me deeply with concern about the safety of that nation and with the common values of democracy and safety that we have, and also for the protection and safety of Jewish American families right here, because the rise in anti-Semitism is absolutely unacceptable. There should be no place for it in our party, and I will be a strong and consistent ally.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bartlett. Justin Strickland.
Howdy, everybody. My name is Justin Strickland. I'm a former captain in the Army. I spent 2 years in combat in Iraq. I'm also a former Pentagon official doing economic development in the Middle East and Afghanistan, having been in Afghanistan 16 times. I'm currently a councilman in Chatham Borough. I've actually been to Israel. I spent time in Jerusalem. I've been all over the Middle East. Why am I running for Congress? There's lots of reasons for why I'm running for Congress. One of the reasons is that I'm not happy with the state of the world. You know, it's a tough place right now. It's tough to get up every morning and face all the awfulness that we experience. But we have to face it, and we have to do something about it. We all know that Donald Trump is awful and bad. We've known that for 10 years. Trump and MAGA have been destroying our country for 10 years. And you know what? I'm going to call it out. The Democratic Party has failed us, because if they had not failed us, we would not be dealing with this right now. Our Democratic leaders need to stop sending strongly worded letters and start acting. I'm running for Congress to act. We need to act. I'm a different type of Democrat. I'm not one that's part of the political machine. I'm not one that's a millionaire. I'm here to do things and get stuff done. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to work for affordability for every American, not just a certain type of Americans. I'm going to start introducing actual policy that helps make your lives better when it's not just a talking point. I'm going to introduce legislation that caps college tuition. I'm going to introduce a child care coupon for up to $25,000 a year so that you can not have to have exorbitant child care costs. I'm going to introduce a home buying program to make it easier to buy a home. I'm going to cap APR on credit cards. I'm going to do a host of other things. And if you could go to justinstrickland.com, you'll be able to find out all more about it. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys today, and look forward to seeing you afterwards as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Annalee Williams.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Annalee Williams, and I'm running for Congress because you deserve a fair deal from your government. I'll address the first elephant in the room. I'm young, I know. If you give me a few years, I'll fix it. Don't worry about it. I want to recognize the moment that we're in. It's only been 11 days, and 2026 has been rough. Trump invaded Venezuela and threatened 6 more countries, including our closest allies. ICE has been given total immunity to go after minorities in unmarked vehicles, to kidnap people off the streets, and they murdered a U.S. citizen. And the Vice President has now said that ICE will be going door to door to hunt people down. If you're part of the Jewish community, or if you study history, alarm bells should be going off in your head. These are telltale signs of fascism, and it makes the future feel scary and uncertain. Authoritarianism doesn't only rise through violence and hate. It rises when normal people lose faith that tomorrow can be better. This moment demands more than outrage. It demands intentional choices. We have to speak out. We have to hold leaders accountable, and we have to organize our communities. And we have to absolutely be clear about the future that we're fighting for. Without that clarity, fear fills the vacuum, and it's through fear that fascism governs. Today, I want to be very clear. We have to fight for our present and for our future. First, we have to stop the bleeding. We have to remove Trump and everyone who supports this administration. That means impeachment and criminal proceedings. But second, and this is what will determine whether we're back here again, we must offer a real vision for the future. When people are struggling, when life feels unaffordable and unstable, demagogues step in and offer blame instead of solutions. That's why I'm fighting for the fair deal. If you work hard, pay your taxes, and show up for your community, then your government should show up for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Cammie Croft, you are our next up.
Is this on? Can you hear me? Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Cammie Croft. I'm a mom of 3 kiddos, being raised in Montclair and our public schools there. They are ages 11, 5, and 4. And one of the reasons we chose to be a part of Northern New Jersey is to be close to our family and my husband's family, and so that my kids can grow up knowing, understanding, and loving themselves and their Jewish heritage. I worked in the Obama administration, where I helped pass the Affordable Care Act, and most recently, I was building and leading this awesome clean energy organization, very focused on helping people save money on their energy bills. Right around this time last year, Donald Trump attacked us. He attacked our organization and me, and I was called out on the Senate floor as being part of some MAGA conspiracy. I know what it's like to be on the other side of a media cycle where you are the target of this administration, and how scary that can feel, especially at a time when they were weaponizing the Department of Justice. And those kids, at that time, I had to think about whether the FBI was going to come to my home and what we might do. I am running for Congress to fight back. I learned to fight from my mom. She grew up in Passaic County. She had 4 babies by the time she was 20 years old. And she raised us, often by herself, on a waitress's tips. And we needed things like food stamps, public housing, Medicaid, programs this administration doesn't give a dang about, because all they care about is themselves and enriching themselves. I fought my way from being a free school lunch kid to working in the Obama White House. That is the America that I know is possible, but is slipping away from us, and that I am fighting to make sure it is still possible for my kids. So one day when they ask me what I did in this moment in the face of this politics of pain and destruction, I will be able to tell them I did everything I possibly could. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Croft. Zach Beecher, you are up next.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Zach Beecher. It's a privilege to be here with all of you today. And when I was thinking about the opportunity to speak with you all, first, I was transported back to my freshman baseball year where we got beat bad by Livingston, and I had to run terrible sprints here. So once I got over that, I was reminded of a quote that meant a lot to me. In 1790, George Washington wrote a letter to the first synagogue in America in Newport, Rhode Island. And he said, "The government of the United States of America gives bigotry no sanction and persecution no assistance." Hard to believe that in the first term of the first president of this country, how far and how different things seem today. When I walked into the synagogue temple earlier today, I saw 240 names of members of this temple who fought from 1941 to 1945 against the tyranny of Germany and Japan in the Second World War. That's the example of meeting, challenging, and fighting tyrants that I know that all of us are proud of and all of us seek to emanate. But those same cries are here now in our own communities, and we see that, and we know that. And for me, this is not something that's foreign in any capacity. My family is an interfaith family. I'm Catholic, my wife is Jewish, we're raising my son as Jewish. These are real conversations around the dinner table for us each and every night. We have to act uniformly in shared purpose and shared dedication to make sure that this country can live up to the idea that out of many we are one. In my experience in the Army, I have seen what that is, to move out on difficult missions, to accomplish what is thought to be unachievable, and to do so with folks that represent the very best and the very most different aspects of this country. I've done that in business, and I'm hoping to do that for all of you in the Congress against this administration and more as we go forward. Thank you for the opportunity today.
Thank you, Mr. Beecher. And our last set of opening remarks will be delivered by J.L. Covan.
Hey everybody, I'm J.L. Covan. I'm an eviction prevention lawyer and I've been a stand-up comic for 20 years. That's true, but thank you for the laugh. I went to a private school in New York. I was a scholarship kid at a private school in New York. Most of my friends were Jewish. I attended approximately 20 bar mitzvahs in 7th grade, so that'll make you a lifelong ally of the Jewish people. Those parties were awesome. My best friend is Jewish, but also my ex-fiance is Jewish, so I think those probably balance out. But I'm also biracial. My father was Haitian, my mom Irish Catholic, and as sort of a white passing about 9 months out of a year, I experience the discomfort of all sorts of hate to my face often because people don't necessarily know what member of what community I am. And being a comic, I think, and being a communicator, and being a sort of brash person who has the freedom to speak his own voice at any time, I find myself fighting people all the time, whether it's in comedy clubs or online or in person, when they say hateful things. And I think what I would say, since this is a very short amount of time, go to jlfornj.com to learn more about me. But the issues that I care about that they said they wanted us to mention: elder care, AI, climate, democracy, and affordable housing. None of those are specific to this community or this forum. But what I will say is, you, like any other affinity group, like any other group under attack in this country, having a voice from your community is important. But as a proven communicator who's built large online communities and spends most of my time fighting, you want the strongest voice to fight for you. And I think I can be that for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Covan. So, candidates, thank you for your opening remarks and for addressing issues that we are not necessarily going to be focusing on today, but we are going to pivot now to specific issues of deep concern to the Jewish community, starting with the easy stuff, Israel and the U.S.-Israel relationship. So I am going to ask you two questions before we take a deeper dive. Two questions where I'm going to ask you for a show of hands. The first one regarding Israel. Do you believe that the Jewish people have the right to self-determination in their ancestral homeland, what is commonly referred to as Zionism? Thank you. Raise your hands, please, if you believe that the special U.S.-Israel relationship should continue to be a fundamental tenet of U.S. foreign policy. Okay, that is all of you. I'm going to follow up on the first question. I think Ms. Mejia and Mr. Strickland, I don't believe either one of you raised your hands. I wonder if you would clarify why you believe that the Jewish people do not have the right to self-determination in their ancestral homeland, what is commonly referred to as Zionism. And you have a minute and a half to answer that question.
So, one, obviously it's a complicated question, and it feels very difficult to just yay or nay. As a black woman, as a woman raising 2 black sons, as someone that understands oppression, I feel incredible discomfort at the idea that a land, a community can only belong to one group of people, to one religion, to one ethnicity. That feels uncomfortable to me. I know what oppression feels like. I certainly believe that Israel has both the right and the responsibility to be a free nation for both Israelis and Palestinians. I would uphold and I would support that as vocally as possible. I do not support the idea of a United States as a white Christian nation. I wouldn't support the idea of any nation having anything that resembles a caste system. I am open to being educated in all ways. What I am not open to is the idea that anyone is born not free. And so forgive me if I misunderstood your question. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to further explain. And I'm open to having additional questions. I see that I have time limits.
Thank you. Before I ask you to respond, Mr. Strickland, I do want to correct one misunderstanding. Israel has a 20% minority Arab population. So I want you to understand that these are people who have equal rights in the state of Israel, 20% minority. So with that, Mr. Strickland, I'd like to hand you the.
I thought I was responding to your response.
So, similar to Ann Lilia, my perspective of government and the Constitution is the idea of separation between church and state. And when I hear that question, I think of it as one state, one religion. And I am uncomfortable with that throughout the entire world. And I know that's not going to be popular with some of the people in this audience. And I think that's what's really important, though, to call out, is that as a leader, I'm supposed to be authentic and real and tell you how I really feel and not pander and say the right thing to get somebody's vote, okay? And so deep and down inside, I truly believe in the Constitution of the United States. I've sworn an oath to support and defend it. And when it comes to living my oaths, I want to take my oaths and be credible and authentic and consistent across the board. And I feel that answering the way I answered is being consistent to my character and who I am and my oath to the Constitution.
Thank you. Before I ask a follow-up question to the other candidates, I do want to ask the two of you, if elected to Congress, would you consider traveling to Israel on a Jewish Federation-sponsored trip to get a better understanding of what the reality, the facts on the ground are? We have taken state legislators and educators to Israel more than once, and I'm wondering if you would be open to that.
I am in complete openness. In fact, as an organizer and also someone that's been trained in Kingian anti-violence, I know that the first steps of tackling any issue is first understanding the problem and second, getting informed and educated. I always adhere to that premise that one must understand, that one must have conversations with frontline communities, that one must, in fact, inform themselves before they make decisions. It's how I practice, it's how I have led my life as both an organizer, as an advocate, and of course I would be open. I will say it is critical and important that we have transparency with each other. We may disagree on some issues. I will always have an open door because there is no one is born knowing everything. It is incredible arrogance and hubris to think that you alone have all of the answers and issues. It's only together that we are going to, in fact, confront the hatred that is harming all of us. And so if that includes visits, if that includes conversations, if that includes evenings of discussions in community, I am, of course, open to all of that. Thank you for the,
Thank you.
the
I take
question.
that as a yes, and Mr. Strickland, that can be a strictly yes or no answer. I'm sure.
Yes, I absolutely would go. I've been to Jerusalem, I've been to Israel. I would love to go again. I had an amazing experience while I was there. I spent a lot of time in the Middle East. I would gladly go and have an open heart and an open mind.
Thank you. To the other candidates, a follow-up question. So you may have read last week, Prime Minister Netanyahu declared that Israel would not be seeking a full renewal of a 10-year military assistance bill that expires in 2028. That was actually concluded during the Obama administration. However, should Israel not be fully capable of providing its own military defensive needs when the program first expires, should the United States extend its commitment to provide Israel with an annual $3.8 billion of military aid? Please raise, well, no, if you would raise your hand to answer that question. Who would like to answer that question? Mr. Malinowski, I actually have a follow-up question for you. I'm going to start with Lieutenant Governor. Only if you feel comfortable answering the question. If you feel comfortable answering the question. Do you believe in renewing and extending U.S. military aid to Israel? Mr. Bartlett?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, because of Israel's need and right to defend itself. Second of all, because of the tremendous benefits that the United States enjoys as a result of that assistance. So folks understand, when we're talking about military assistance to Israel, we're talking about funds, virtually all of which are spent here in the United States by manufacturers that have the opportunity to benefit from technologies and from learning about technologies like David's Sling, like the Iron Dome. These are things that add value from a United States standpoint and that are essential to Israel's ability to defend itself. I did read about Prime Minister Netanyahu's statement last week. That's not somebody I agree with on everything, but if Israel wants to go in that direction, that is fine. If they need more time or more help, I think we should behave consistently as we have all along.
Thank you. Mr. Beecher?
With the exception of Justin being the only candidate on this stage who's actually led defense cooperation deployed forward in the Middle East, I know how important it is to work alongside our partners in order to be able to drive these types of programs. Not only does it matter in Israel in terms of their innovation, which is a quiet and significant catalyst for both New Jersey's economy and the Israeli economy across multiple sectors, there's a significant opportunity in what it says about enabling a democracy to thrive in its security in the Middle East. And when we consider what we've been able to drive with the Abraham Accords, but also, despite that, the stubborn insecurity that we see across the region, just consider the activities happening in Iran this weekend, look at what we've seen elsewhere and the levels of violence, the ability to maintain, sustain, and ultimately scale the security of Israel is vital to both our interests in the region, but also in our enduring alliance and the values that we share.
Thank you, Mr. Beecher. Mr. Cohen? I'll just go down the line.
You asked, in the framing of, you said Israel, but I think Netanyahu's Israel is how I would describe it. And I don't trust him. I think he is corrupt. I think he took action far beyond the pale in Gaza. And instead of saying, would we renew with Israel, while Benjamin Netanyahu is leading that country in the manner that he is, I would not.
Thank you. Ms. Croft?
I believe in the very special relationship that the U.S. and Israel have together and our support to Israel as a state of itself. I am conflicted when I think about the leadership of Netanyahu and what he has done in his administration in that. With that said, I still believe that we should extend that, we should support it.
Thank you. Mr. Gill?
Thank you, Linda. I've simply yes. I would absolutely support the extension. I deeply appreciate the distinction that my colleagues are trying to make, but this is a very simple question, like that defines our support of the most important strategic partner we have in that region. So the answer is yes.
Thank you. Mr. Griselle?
Israel is one of the United States' most important allies in the world, if not the most important ally, in a very strategic spot in the world. We need to be supporting democracy wherever it exists, in Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan, everywhere that it's flourishing, and we need to support our brothers and sisters in democracy. The answer is yes, we absolutely need to support Israel with aid, and if I were to be in Congress, that aid would be unconditional. Israel needs our full-throated support as one of the most important allies in the world. And I would really love to hear what the other candidates say about conditioning the aid versus unconditional aid to Israel, because some of us up here have spoken about conditioning aid. My position is that it would be unconditional aid to Israel.
Thank you, Mr. Griselle. Mr. Malinowski, I'm going to give you a chance to answer that since I was going to ask you in any event about your
Could I
comments
answer your first question, though, first?
Please
or?
do.
Okay. So first of all, just an addendum to what you said. So it's not just that the Prime Minister a week ago said we should wind down in 10 years, but Senator Lindsey Graham, who chairs the appropriating process for aid around the world, immediately responded, and he is arguably the most pro-Israel member of the United States Senate, that we should in fact wind down to zero immediately. So this is like, there are a lot of conversations happening right now that I'm trying to absorb, that are kind of hard to fully comprehend. But I think we should all be aware of where that conversation may be heading. My feeling is, in answer to your direct question, that we have to start from a basic fundamental principle that the United States has both a moral and strategic interest in making sure that Israel can defend itself against all of its enemies. That said, Israel is right now, and I think this is where the Prime Minister and Lindsey Graham are coming from, it is the dominant military power in its region. And October 7th did not happen because Israel lacked military hardware or support from the United States. That atrocity, that travesty, as any IDF commander would tell you, happened for other reasons. And so I think we also need to be thinking, rather than saying 3.8, 3.8, 3.8 every year, thinking about all of the other forms of cooperation, intelligence cooperation, military cooperation, that are over and above the monetary aid relationship, which even the Prime Minister says we need a little bit less of. I would also be open to something that President Biden essentially in practice put into place. Remember, under President Biden, for the first time in our history, we actually put U.S. military forces in the field to defend the state of Israel. I would want to move to a more mature alliance relationship where we formalize that as a formal alliance mutual defense commitment, rather than this dependency that has been characterized the relationship over the years. And I think there is a growing consensus in the state of Israel that that's really what we should be shooting for. Thanks.
Thank you. I would follow it up, but I'm going to continue going down the line, and hopefully we'll have a chance to ask some follow-ups afterwards. Ms. Mejia.
So I choose to uncouple the idea of whether or not I support Netanyahu. I will be transparent. I do not support his administration. I believe that the way in which he has behaved and the decisions made have in fact made Israelis more unsafe. I believe that his actions have in fact made us all unsafe. I understand that when one community is exposed to harm and destruction, we are all actually further at risk. And so I feel strongly that I cannot support a despot. I cannot. That does not equate that I do not support the Israeli people or the state of Israel. Those two things are separate. If you judge me by Donald Trump, I couldn't be further away. Perhaps others feel the same. You ask, what are the conditions? Well, to be frank, the idea of arming or of providing aid to a despot that would potentially wholesale destroy innocent people is not okay with me, and I believe it's not okay with many of you. I think that we can walk and chew gum, that we can make demands with our aid, with our support, that we can work together with Israelis who agree with me with the words I am saying.
Thank you. I think
Thank
we're going to
you.
have to move on. Thank you. Mr. Strickland?
So I would say it's conditional, and it's conditional because of Benjamin Netanyahu. And as much as I think everyone in this room doesn't want the rest of the world to think that America is Donald Trump, I don't understand why we have to link and say Israel is Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm supportive of Israel's, right to exist and be able to, have freedom and free from harm and live in peace. We can use our influence as the United States to help that in other ways besides just handing over weapons of war. We all know that the world does not view the relationship in the United States in a favorable light globally. We should use our influence to start talking to other countries and start helping them to understand the reasons on why we are supporting Israel and how they can support Israel as well. But this unilateral Israel and U.S. against the world is not helpful and does not help solve the situation. And so I think that we have to be very careful with, how we proceed. And we have to look at what has happened. We cannot just unconditionally give, weapons of war. We have done that, and we have seen what has happened. And women and children and civilians have died, and I cannot sit back and just unconditionally hand over money and weapons of war and let that continue to happen again.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Lieutenant Governor?
Sure, I'm going to rise for this because this is a significant and important question, right? And my response is absolutely yes. I say this because do I agree with Netanyahu all the time? No. But the basic premise is all about the people. It is all about us realizing that we are allies and Israel is a democracy in the region. I also say that we need a rep who is experienced in these issues. And by myself having been on a delegation through AJC in 2019, it became clear to me this important question because you get to see the alliance of not only the security, the intelligence, but the democratic values that each and every one of us share. And also as a leader in this state overseeing the Israel Commission, I know your first ask about Zionism. Well, I'm fully aware of my membership. It's not just Jewish, it's Arabs, and it's of course African Americans who make up and educate and inform about the community and the need to be secure and be allies.
Thank you. Ms. Way. Ms. Williams.
Thank you. So to this question, I think we have to be really thoughtful about how we move forward, right? In terms of aid, first I just want to acknowledge that we did see tens of thousands of innocent civilians and people die over the past 3 years. And what's important to acknowledge about that is that does not make anybody safer, right? War does nothing to make Jews safer, and it only increases the anti-Semitism that we're seeing around the world. right? So when we're talking about aid to Israel, it has to be conditional, right? Our role as an ally is sure to, when Israel needs help, yeah, we can come in and we can support, but at the same time, we can't allow there to be blank checks on bad behavior, right? So we have to be very critical of Netanyahu and a right-wing nationalist government, just like we have to be critical of our own government in the United States. Because at the end of the day, if we want to really fight against anti-Semitism and make Jews safer, that means Israel cannot be at war with its neighbors.
Zach, did you have a? I think I'm going to have to. We have a few questions that are really critical that I'd like to move forward with, if that's all right. Because time is. Okay. Yeah.
Following up on your idea about the neighborhood, shifting to Iran a little bit. By a show of hands, we're all seeing this is a show of hands question, but we're all seeing the troubling images coming out of Iran, where peaceful protesters are being shot in the street. Do you support the United States government getting involved to protect the protesters? Do you support the U.S. government taking action to support the protesters from being killed in the streets?
I mean, is this a
Yes or no?
yes or no?
Yes or no?
Yeah. I think that deserves a bit more.
Yeah, I made a sign that says this deserves a discussion.
It's a great sign. Points for that. Okay, I'm going to ask a second question, which is also a show of hands question, and then there's going to be a follow-up question to that, which is all on the same subject, so you could address that in the follow-up. By a show of hands, who believes that the United States did the right thing by attacking Iran's Fordo nuclear facility last June?
Do you mind repeating the question? It was, yes.
By a show of hands, who believes that the United States did the right thing by attacking Iran's Fordo nuclear facility last June during the Iran-Israel war? Okay, we'll get to it. Okay, now here's the follow-up question. If Iran seeks to rebuild its nuclear capability and restock its ballistic missile stockpile, would you support a decision for the U.S. to use force again? And if not, how would you try to contain the Iranian regime and its malevolent intention to destroy Israel and spread its influence throughout the Western world? That's a question.
That's not yes or no, right?
No, that's not a yes or no. That's not a yes or no. That's a question that everyone can answer. Yes, everyone can go one at a time.
I'm happy to. I have some strong feelings on all of this. So I mentioned before, I've served in combat in Mosul, Iraq. I think the first thing that's really important for us all to consider, right, is that when we're talking about protecting liberty, we're talking about protecting life, and we're talking about security, that we have this false premise that war is this incredibly precise machine. It's not. It's not. Good people die and bad people live. It's not fair. It's the most awesome responsibility that government has is the national security of its nation, the protection of its people, and the ability and the decision to use force because of how imprecise war can be. So I think that's the table stakes. I think it's very important for us to consider that. The second is we have to have conversations with our people, treat them as adults to understand what the implications of combat are, because it's a crucible, because of those dynamics. And third, as a democracy, we have a responsibility to consider the way that we use force, to consider the way that we apply force, because it says a lot about who we are as a people. Now, a lot of my colleagues failed to mention there's a very important piece of legislation called the Leahy Act, which actually prevents war criminals and other people from getting weapons of destruction. I've had to apply that in my own work in Iraq. It's important to consider that we think about the frameworks and the laws that we have. We also have to think about Iran as the head of the snake. I've been shot at by militia folks in Iran, powered and funded by Iran. So have many other U.S. troops. This is a real challenge for us, for every nation across the world, and Iran needs to be dealt with in a serious way, but we need to talk to voters and one another about how far we're willing to go.
I think there's a couple things that some of my colleagues on the stage don't understand when we're talking about the notion of conditionality. It's not Netanyahu versus not Netanyahu. We're running for a seat in the United States Congress, which means the question is, do you put into legislation a power that you either hand to the President of the United States or some other determinator to decide whether or not to provide the funding that you have allocated? And I understand that it's actually sort of Trumpian to say, well, it matters who's the other person because if we like them or we don't like them. But the question has got to be based on some sort of principle. And I'll give you an example. A couple of months ago, Ukraine, I know I'm changing regions, but I have a point. A couple of months ago, Ukraine attacked Russian warplanes on the ground in Russia. Was that offensive or defensive? Because that offensive-defensive contrast is a very common one when you're talking about conditioning aid. That's not something to put in the hands of the executive when we see that sometimes we elect Trumps in this nation. On the Iran question, Iran is an existential threat to Israel and the region and to the world. A non-nuclear Iran must be a national priority for the United States. I would always prefer diplomacy to military as the way to get there, but both as an ally of Israel and as a supporter of peace in the world, we need to make sure that Iran remains non-nuclear. As to the protests there right now, it really depends what you mean by respond. If you're talking about American troops on the ground, no. If you're talking about using soft power to try and support those students in what they're doing and to try and support democratization in Iran, sure.
Who would like to answer that question about?
I'll just jump in very briefly. I have no trust or faith in this current administration to get involved in any foreign engagements. And that is how I come to this question, and every day is an anxiety-inducing moment, and what else or where else is he going to go next? And I do not have, and I don't think any of us do, the orientation to trust that, one, Congress, he's going to respect the powers of Congress and how we do that engagement, and that he is not going to cause more harm to us in getting involved in Iran. And you see that by us not being part of the JCPOA right now, and that not being, and not doing diplomacy first and seeing other ways in which we can get involved. So that's how I think about the lens of this question and the complexities of the lack of somebody who has a plan and not impulsivity when they are approaching these very engagements.
Thank you. JL?
Hi. At the risk of sounding naive, our unwillingness to sort of draw a clear line between Netanyahu and Israel, I think, killed Democrats in the 2024 election. That is not a call to abandon Israel at all, but if we can't make, at this point, some sort of dividing line between Netanyahu, who is leading a far-right government, basically out of self-protection, and you want to talk about Trumpian, Netanyahu, to me, is a smarter, more ruthless version of Trump. He's corrupt. He has made a deal with far-right extremists to keep himself in power, and the bodies keep piling up. And if we can't, at this point, sort of draw a line as Democrats and say, we can stand with Israel, but at some point, we need a line in terms of what we allow and what we morally condone as a country, I don't know what we do as Democrats. As far as Iran, supported the bombing and would bomb it again.
Okay, I just want to refocus everyone to please answer the question about the nuclear status in Iran, and did you support the bombing, and would you support the bombing of them if they retain that capacity?
I did, yeah.
Thank you, Ben, because I was just going to ask if we were answering the second question or the first one again. But on the second question, yes, and yes. It's been, again, I appreciate the nuances that are being discussed here deeply. but this is, again, a very straightforward question. We cannot allow Iran to have nuclear weapons, period. And we need to take action at any given time. That could mean a variety of things to make sure that we ensure that. That is where we need to be. That is the place where we should be, and that's where I would be. Quickly, just on the first question about the protests, one of the things right now that I do believe we need, and if I had the opportunity to serve in this seat, is that we need our federal representatives to be talking about that a lot more. You do not hear a lot about what is going on in Iran with those protests through our own federal folks right now. That is a huge opportunity and one that we should be taking right now if we had the honor to serve as one of the members representing this particular district.
Thanks. On the first question about the student protests, as I said before, we need to be supporting democracy all over the world, where it exists and where the seeds are starting to sprout. And that includes in Iran. And if they're protesting to overthrow the government and have their own self-control, I think we should be supporting that. On the terms of the bombing, yes, we absolutely need to ensure that Iran does not have nuclear weapons. But I want to remind everybody why Iran has the capability to actually have nuclear weapons. And if we look at the war in the Middle East that just occurred with Israel and the war in Ukraine, it is based on oil. Oil is funding wars across our country. And that's why when an engineer looks at a big picture view of what's happening around the world, if we go and electrify our own country, get ourselves off of fossil fuel, drive down the price of oil around the world, these tyrannies, these tyrants won't have the money to fund wars like we're seeing today.
What we're seeing in Iran right now is, I think, one of the most profound revolutions for human rights and specifically for women's rights that we have seen in the world in a very long time. These are not student protests, if I can correct that. This is a nationwide protest against tyranny that should inspire all of us. Let me back up to the other questions and then come back to that. I think Israel did not just itself but the world a favor in exposing the weakness of Iran's air defenses and its supposed deterrent, and of Hezbollah's supposed deterrent. I am, don't get me wrong, very deeply critical of the current government of Israel on a lot of issues, but I strongly supported those actions and strongly supported the support, the intelligence support that the United States provided to them. And I did support, as much as I despise the Trump administration, I gotta call it like I see it, I think it was a good thing that we very briefly and decisively intervened to make sure that there was real damage done to those nuclear facilities that only our capabilities were able to inflict in a way that also enabled the war to end with fewer civilian casualties. What can be done now? Everyone says support the revolution. Let's talk about practically. The Iranian government just shut off the internet entirely. And guess what our best tool against that is? A little thing called Voice of America. And guess who shut off the Voice of America last year? Donald Trump and Elon Musk. I was on the board of directors of Radio Free Europe, which has an Iran service that is still going because we fought Trump in court and we won. And the Iranian people actually still have a lifeline because I and a few of us fought the Trump administration to keep that going. Where I'd be a little bit more wary is of military action, which is something that is now being absolutely discussed in the Trump administration on behalf of the protesters, because I agree with Zach. Morally, I would be for it. Practically, I would be very wary of Pete Hegseth planning an operation that sensitive and delicate, although I would not oppose it morally if I thought that it would actually work.
Thank you. A lot to say. Thank you.
I'm watching Marcia's face. I was like, Marcia's going to get you.
I apologize.
No. I was just, this is a heavy subject. And and it's not a game. I deeply believe that it is imperative for all people who desire freedom that we support the efforts of other human beings, of other people seeking that freedom for themselves. So I, of course, support the efforts of Iranian people trying to ensure that they can live free. I agree with some of my colleagues here that we have to ensure that we are creating guardrails, that we are not, in fact, exacerbating the problem by giving a corrupt administration the blank check or the ability to just make decisions that, let's be real, Donald Trump's motivation is avarice, is how to capture additional land, how to enrich himself and his family, and we cannot facilitate it. That's why it's important that we send members to Congress who will fully hold their constitutional role in what roles our country plays in warfare, ensuring that Congress has full control and oversight on what expenditures we make as we offer human beings support to live free. And I disagree that there is absolutism, that we could only say this is black and white. It's not. And in fact, this is a job interview in many ways. We are standing before you and saying, we will make informed decisions that are rooted in morals and values and in understanding. And to say that it is black and white, that I will only say yes because that's what I am expected to, frankly, that is bad representation. I wouldn't want to represent you in Congress if I am saying there's only one right and one wrong, and that's it, with no details. So thank you again. Thank you. I'll hand it over.
So I spent 2 years in Iraq in combat, and the insurgents got a lot of support from the country of Iran, and I think most people know that. I don't trust the Trump administration to do any kind of military action because I don't think they're honest. I don't think they do things with the right intentions. So I am wary of every single military action, with the bombing of Iran, with the, Venezuela. I don't trust anything they do. And so I'm always going to be skeptical, and I'm going to be like, I don't think that's the right action because I don't trust them. But having been to war, I understand the costs of it. And what I see with this administration is they use our military for political purposes or for enriching themselves. And so I looked at the bombing of Iran as a political thing to pander and posture. And I don't think we should ever use the military to do that. I don't think we should put the lives of our service members in those positions like that. And so that's why I did not raise my hand. I think that it's vital that we support protesting for human rights and dignity. I think that's the obligation of the United States of America. And our actions as a country and our actions when we use our military should always be from a point of moral authority, of doing what's right and standing up for democracy and humanity and freedom for everyone.
Thank you.
In my role as Secretary of State, I have a United States federal security clearance. And I mention this because I get classified intelligence. And for me, in conducting elections, when I receive the classified intelligence, it's always about strategy, right? I look at this situation and I raise my hand swiftly because it is what it is. Iran does not need to have any control over nuclear power. It is what it is, that they are a destabilizing force in the region and an existential threat. Sadly so, we are hearing the reports of peaceful protesters, similar to what we just read and saw in Minnesota. Someone fatally shot. So with that being said, I respond yes to both, because we cannot continue to have innocent lives of our people across this nation and globally destroyed.
Thank you. Williams?
So I was going to start off by saying that I don't think any of us here on the stage, aside from our Lieutenant Governor, have the military intelligence and information to determine whether the strike last year was just and justified, right? And that goes back into the trust of our current administration and leadership, and also really the question of when you have right-wing nationalist leaders that are trying to perpetuate war, perpetuate a vision, can we trust them to keep us safe and lead us effectively? The second part of that question is, should we support democratization in Iran? Yes, right? But I think, like some of my colleagues have said, I think we should support it, out loud and vocally and publicly, but that doesn't mean that we should be sending US troops to go intervene. And I also want to say that we need to focus on democracy here in the United States right now. Like, oh my gosh, right? We have a huge problem here. So I want to call that out because the more we focus on the foreign wars that are ultimately going to make us all less safe, the faster our own democracy slips away.
Thank you. I am going to turn domestically. We're one final question, and I'm going to make it easy by not asking for a show of hands. I don't want to confuse anyone, but I want to turn to the rise of hate and anti-Semitism, not just in our country, but in this very state that has seen a surge. This isn't a rise, it's a surge of anti-Semitism on our campuses, in our public schools K through 12, in the town squares, in places that we have been witnessing this on a day-to-day basis. And as I'm sure you all know, our state leaders had made the decision just last week to kill a piece of legislation, the IRA bill, which has been passed in 37 states, which in the state of New Jersey, having the fourth largest Jewish population in the United States, we cannot pass this bill, at least not during this legislative session. So the question that I have for you, and I'm going to turn this to the federal level, in 2024, the House of Representatives passed the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, which requires the Department of Education to use the IRA definition when investigating complaints of anti-Semitism. Do you support the goals of the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, using the IRA definition? Would you vote for a strengthened or updated version of the bill because it didn't pass in the Senate? So would you agree to pass the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act in a future Congress? And if not, what concrete steps do you think that Congress can take to address this despicable rise of hate in our country? I can start on the other end this time. I was just going to ask if you could read the IRA definition. Yeah, it is a little long, but it essentially is considered to be the gold standard internationally to identify acts of anti-Semitism, or identify and define anti-Semitism. It does not, I think there are concerns that it would prohibit or impact First Amendment issues. It doesn't, certainly not in this state. Again, it was passed by Congress in 2024. But if you don't feel comfortable referring to the IRA definition, have you thought of ways that Congress could address the rise of hate in this country?
Yeah, absolutely. First, I want to call out, in thinking about anti-Semitism, we have seen a lot more of it, obviously, over the past several years. And I think of it as, the hate crime that happened in Australia, right, in December. I think of it as acts of violence, hateful rhetoric, and hateful actions towards members of the Jewish community. So we have to be very clear about that, and just clear in acknowledging that it's wrong and there's no space for it. I think the second part of that is whether or not, we criticize Israel and the actions of the Israeli government. And I think it's very important to separate those two things, right? Because we know that people are not their leaders, people are not their governments, so we have to be very clear on that. And then the last thing to call out is that I think it's our role as an ally of Israel to hold leaders accountable. Actions that Congress can and should take are both long-term and short-term. I'll start with short-term. Short-term is just making sure that people feel safe, right, in their synagogues and their temples. It's working with community leaders to say, okay, how can we provide security? How can we make sure that you are physically okay? That's the first step. I think a longer-term step is funding education efforts, right? Making sure that we teach history, we teach civic education, and we work with students to understand and think critically about the future ahead and look at issues and be thoughtful. And then I think the last thing we can, again, address in our own communities here is how we navigate a police force like ICE that is acting unaccountably, and we have to fight fascism here at home.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor?
Sure. This one really rings true to my heart because as an African American female, how I have even been discriminated against and had threats. But I tell you, going to Ben area, Jishara, just, mourning, right, with your community. After the October 2023, we commemorated a year afterwards, and that was during the time in which the rise in the student higher education space with anti-Semitism and hate. And there was a Rutgers student who spoke up. And after the service, I spoke with him and reassured him that my Israel Commission was going to, of course, write something, right, in which our administration would take to our university heads, making sure that our students felt safe. Getting to your point about IRA, I was very unsettled when I heard some of my governing partners oppose IRA's introduction into the General Assembly, moving it forward, because this has to stop. It has to stop, y'all. We talked, in my introduction, I'm sorry if I go over, I apologize about this, but when Eden Alexander, he was making his way home in the community, I was acting governor in Bergen County, they called me up because they not only wanted to see an official's presence, they wanted to know that they were protected from all of this. And so in Congress, I will vehemently fight for this anti-Semitism bill to get passed, because not only should Jackson, Mississippi be erased from our history, and I dated it back to the KKK in 1967, but Sydney, Australia, and all that our children are going through.
Thank you. Mr. Strickland.
Former Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara had a book, you might have seen his documentary called Fog of War, and one of the lessons that he talks about in that is that when other people in your community that you have the same values with start questioning whether or not you're doing the right thing, you probably should reevaluate yourself and say, am I doing the right thing, okay? And all across the world, IRA is recognized, and so we should be recognizing it too in the state of New Jersey. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that I know everything that's in that bill. I'm not going to pretend. Whether or not I'm going to support a bill or not, I need to read it. But I can tell you I support IRA, and I most importantly support education about anti-Semitism. I think about the Holocaust is the absolute worst thing in the history of our world, and we need to make sure that that everybody learns about that in schools and continues to live on after all the folks that survived the Holocaust have passed. That needs to be in our culture forever, and we need to do everything we can to make sure nothing like that ever happens again. And if we don't
pass laws and protections to make sure that there is no anti-Semitism, then we are on a slippery slope to potentially someday get back to something like that, and we should never get back to that.
Thank you.
I will answer the question in reverse to start. What would I do? What are some ideas that I have from the federal level to ensure that rising, the surge in anti-Semitism, the surge in anti-Blackness, the surge in anti-immigrant rhetoric and actions, state-sanctioned violence, that we curb it and that we are vocal and strong in doing so. I was the deputy director of the Women's Bureau under President Biden's Department of Labor. I learned there that there are opportunities for our federal government to ensure that we are investing in research and community partnership and education so that we can move an idea or issue. So I would advocate for, of course we need to teach the history of the fact that during the Holocaust, 80% of European Jews were destroyed. And that we must ensure that we are educating our children so that we do not, history does not repeat itself, but it does inform. The erasure of Black history is the same. We are actively erasing harm so that it can, in fact, repeat itself. So I would advocate for, one, funding, ensuring that there is broad education on all of these issues, on instances of hate throughout history so that we can, in fact, prevent it. I would be advocating for resources to promote community partnerships so that we carry out that education, but also so that community has an opportunity, cross-community, across different groupings, have an opportunity to engage in resolving the issue together. Now, on the question on, on your bill, I will share that my concern is where it encroaches on First Amendment rights. And so if what we are saying is that we will ensure that we protect the ability to teach this history and teach these moments while we fight the rise in anti-Semitism and the rise in hate, then I am an advocate. Where I draw the line is where we cede our constitutional rights and protections.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Malinowski.
I would support it if it comes up. So, simple answer to that question, but with the caveat that I don't want anyone here to believe that this is going to make the fundamental difference. Simply changing a definition in a law that even people on this stage apparently haven't read. So what would I do? I'm going to talk about three big things. Number one, and this was the number one cause of my 4 years in Congress, and I will fall on my sword to fight for this if I get back there. We have to hold accountable the big tech companies that have created the most powerful communications platforms in the world that are consciously designed to take the most hateful ideas, the most hateful messages, the content that triggers people's fear and paranoia and hatred of the other, including anti-Semitism, and that is designed to deliver those messages to precisely those people who are most susceptible to them. Nothing we can do will beat anti-Semitism if we don't do that. They have no liability. They should have liability. Number two, right now, if you're in the FBI and you see a group planning an anti-Semitic attack on the left, you are free to act. And thank goodness for that. If you see a group from the right planning an anti-Semitic attack, a violent attack, you have to think that this administration has fired dozens of federal law enforcement agents for investigating those groups in the last year. I do not believe they feel they have the freedom to do that, and that makes us less safe. Congress has to change that. Number three, this is a moral challenge. Leaders have to speak out. If we are on the left, we have to hold our side accountable. This week, there was a protest in New York in which people came to a Jewish institution with explicitly pro-Hamas messaging. Every Democrat, everyone on the left, has to denounce that as evil and wrong. That said, those people on the far left who are expressing those anti-Semitic notions despise the leadership of the Democratic Party. The people on the right who espouse those notions are becoming the leadership of the Republican Party. And I think we have to be very, very honest about that. When it is now in the national security strategy of the United States that our primary goal in Europe is to support so-called patriotic parties. One of them is the AfD, the neo-Nazi party in Germany. Call me old-fashioned. I don't think it would be a good idea for the Nazis to rule Germany. But this is what we're dealing with. Explicitly Christian messaging on government websites around Christmas. Trump meeting with Tucker Carlson this week. The President of the United States personally owning a social media platform that is a cesspool of Jew hatred. You should call out Democrats and make sure we hold our side accountable. But this is a pet peeve of mine, because I sometimes have people come up to me and say, I could never vote for a Democrat again because they're anti-Semites. You're going to support that side? Lindsey Graham, this is the second time I mentioned him, a couple of months ago, was speaking to the Republican Jewish Committee. This is important. He said, I am proud to be a member of the Nazis-sucked wing of the Republican Party. Good for you. What about the other way?
Thank you.
So I think we've seen a rise of hate of all kinds across our country. Hate has been unleashed, as Tom just said, through the internet. Here in New Jersey, I think it's pathetic that we haven't passed the IRA definition. 37 other states have some form of it on their books. I, as a Jewish mayor, went down to Trenton last year to advocate on its behalf. I sat there in front of the panel. I called out globalize the Intifada as hate speech in front of half a room of Palestinian protesters, proud to raise my strong Jewish voice to support that. But I don't think anybody else on this stage was down in Trenton advocating for IRA. If I'm wrong, let me know, but I think I'm the only voice up here who was down in Trenton before that Assembly Commission. In Congress, I definitely would be supporting the AAA Act, and I have lived that. I don't just talk it, I say I like to walk the talk. I was a proud founding member of a Jewish initiative called Community Leaders Against Hate 5 years ago, founded by this federation that we're within right now. We fought hate of all kinds. We fought Islamophobia over the Muslim ban. We fought Chinese hate because of what happened over COVID. And we fought against ongoing anti-Semitism. It's not new, it's been around for centuries. We need strong Jewish voices to fight back.
Thank you. Mr. Gill.
Thank you. So again, and I do believe that there is, and I appreciate a comment made earlier that there is nuance to these issues and that we should have lots of input. The reason I'm trying to be direct is because you are asking for the people here today very quickly decisions that we will have to make. And of course we are going to take lots of input on those decisions. Of course we're going to have relationships with the community that we're seeking to represent, but at some point you need to know where we are. And on this particular issue, first on the state, Jeff, I agree with you. I was on the record, even though I was Governor Murphy's campaign manager, I disagree with him on this issue. I was on the record supporting the state bill. I said I think it should happen. I thought our state leaders should make it happen right now. There's still 2 days left in the lame duck session. It doesn't look like it's possible. I think it should happen, and it should have happened yesterday. Secondly, at the federal level, absolutely, would support the bill. Would continue to support the bill and the aims of the bill. What can we do as members of Congress? Most importantly, is to have relationships on the ground. So it's very important what goes on in Washington, but it's also important to know the communities you're seeking to represent. Just within the last 2 years, in a state that has the most anti-Semitic acts per capita than any other state in the country, we had a Molotov cocktail thrown at Temple Ner Tamid. We had young people going in a synagogue in South Orange who had blood thrown at them. In my own hometown of Montclair, we have had the Israeli flag twice in the last 2 weeks attempted to be stolen. I'm sorry, excuse me. It was attempted to be stolen twice. They caught the person who did it. The County of Essex decided not to prosecute that case as a hate or bias crime. I had immediate outreach from the community. I'm not going to opine on whether they should have or not, but this is what I think distinguishes my candidacy. I'm not new to these relationships or the people that I'm seeking to represent. Folks reached out immediately. I was able to follow up and get some answers as to where the county was on that issue. I think that's important when we're trying to talk about dealing with the issue of anti-Semitism right now, not only nationwide, but in our home.
Thank you. I'm going to start by telling a little bit of a story from this past summer. My kids have been going to Camp Dini Rhinebeck for about 6 or so years now. It's put on by the JCC, Metro West, and supported there. And it's an awesome camp. My kids are on the path to becoming camp counselors at some point in that community. And one of the summer, picking up my kiddos from their bus stop, Gideon, who's 10 at the time, told me about a sign that he saw along the highway on his bus ride back. And I want to be very careful to say these were not the exact words, and I don't think they were this strong, but it was something to the effect about Jews having blood on their hands. And my son asked me if he was a bad person. A 10-year-old little boy who's at a very critical stage of understanding who he wants to be in the world and the community that he's a part of, that is learning, he's learning his values and how to love that community that he is a part of, seeing how the impacts of anti-Semitism is shaping our young people right now and who they want to be and how they come to their faith, which is a very personal thing. So when I think about this moment that we're in, and I think about the 37 other states that have passed us and we have not, I just think about the fear and how unsafe that continues to make us feel. So thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thank you.
I would support the definition and the bill. I think in terms of where we're headed, part of the problem and part of the fear in terms of free speech is that we have both a Supreme Court and an executive and a Congress that are not good faith actors, that are not sort of true adherents to our free speech principles. So the fear, I think, is validated that certain things could be abused. In terms of how anti-Semitism is defined and how linked it is to Zionism and then legitimate criticisms of it. I do think, piggybacking off of what Tom said, I think this is also why we need people who are looking forward to AI, because if you think social media has corrupted our youth and is destroying speech and the souls of our kids, AI is going to be that on steroids. But I think part of what I think of as somebody who's half Haitian, I look at America in terms of its history as a place where so many groups were sort of told, F you, here's some lemons. And then when those groups create the best lemonade, there's this intense backlash against groups, whether it's in the arts, whether it's in business, whether it's in other fields, where there then becomes this resentment. But if you look at the greatest civil rights movement in this country's history, it was when a lot of those groups, mainly black people supported by Jewish people, created the greatest civil rights movement in this country. And I think we need communicators who can build bridges between different communities as we go forward, because having one strong Jewish voice is not enough. There aren't enough Jewish people, just like there aren't enough black people in this country, to make advances and protect those communities. You need people who can reach across and build up those communities.
So when I think back on really almost every American story, they came to this country in search of a place where they could truly be themselves. They could live and practice their faith without fear. And to me, when you really think about the Jewish people, almost all of them practicing their faith who immigrated here came to this country fleeing violence. My wife, who's in the back, her family came at the turn of the last century fleeing pogroms in Russia. I'm sure many of you in the audience have histories in your family that share the same. Fundamentally, we must believe that hate has no home here. I'm deeply disappointed, and I would reintroduce and argue to reintroduce at the state level to push to join those 37 other states on the IRA definition. I've been heartened by the activities of Senator Timberlake in Essex County and the introduction around criminalizing the malevolent intent of the Nazi symbols and the noose as a symbol and an effort to drive fear. We have to drive out hate. We have to drive hate out at its core, and we've got to fight it wherever it raises its head. And everyone should be able to be who they are and practice their faith without fear. At the federal level, one of the most important parts of being a U.S. rep is having a district office where you can facilitate constituent services. The Nonprofit Security Grant Act was about $275 million in FY25. We need to fight for those dollars to be higher in order to make sure that we can practice faith without fear, but we need to make sure that our office is in a position to facilitate that no one ever has that risk here in the 11th District.
I kind of like going last because I got some answers, but not all the answers that I wanted from my colleagues here on the stage. I'm very glad to hear, Brendan, after being endorsed by Governor Murphy, you're disappointed in the fact that he was behind the failure of IRA yesterday. I didn't get to hear, Tom, you've talked quite a bit about your mutual support for Andy Kim, how you feel about the fact that he not only opposed IRA in the House of Representatives, but wouldn't even join 130 Democrats who voted to support the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. And I would encourage everyone to check out Anna Lilia's social media feed. You are amplifying a lot of the things, you have amplified a lot of the things that blur that line that we speak of anti-Semitism versus anti-Zionism, but it's exactly at the heart of the IRA definition and the other things that we're talking about here. If you have a position on Gaza, if you have something to say about Netanyahu or the Israeli government, but you're saying it directed at an American synagogue, you're saying it with a brick or a Molotov cocktail thrown at an American synagogue or a Jewish school or a bus full of Jewish students, if you're directing your feelings about foreign policy at Rutgers Hillel, you are exactly what IRA is talking about, and that is what we need to be standing up against. You all, and you know, Zach talked about some of the many family stories that got you here. You are all entitled in this country to live without fear. And Temple leadership are entitled to live without paying the anti-Semitism tax that you pay, having to hire security, having to do all the things that you harden. The fact that there are some federal grants for that is great, but we need more. But more than that, we need to fight the anti-Semitism that's at the heart of that. And I'm committed to that every day in Congress, starting with IRA and the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, but going beyond that as an ally, as a Christian who wants to speak up for all of you and your rights. Thank you.
So while we do have more questions to ask, the hour is late. So we want to thank all our candidates for joining us here today. Please note that the special election primary is scheduled for Thursday, February 5th. The winner of the Democratic primary will face Republican Joe Hathaway on April 6th. There are 3 ways to vote. Either on the day of the primary, Thursday, February 5th. You can also vote early in person on Friday, January 29th through Tuesday, February 3rd, or by mail-in ballot. Once you've applied for and received the ballot, you can return it by mailing it to the county clerk's office, placing it in a secure ballot drop box, or returning it to your county board of elections office before polls close on February 5th. The deadline to register, if you're not already registered, is January 15th. To the candidates on stage, thank you for joining us today. And thank you for your honesty. We wish you the best of luck and look forward to working with the winner of the special election to advance the goals of our community and improve the lives of all New Jerseyans. Thank you all.